Before there was plants, there were warriors. Before Fright for Fusion, there was Miracle Fusion. Before Shaddolls took center stage as the premier fusion theme, there were heroes. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Plus Ones, a series where we take a single card, break down what it does, and explore what it can do. Today, we begin the exploration of heroes, piloted primarily by everyone's favorite Slifer Slacker, Jaden Yuki. Looking at the Dark Magician cards was really cool because they've been a fan favorite archetype for a while, but they didn't really have a competitive infrastructure. Heroes, on the other hand, have been on and off the competitive circuit for years, and already have a variety of game-winning cards to build off of. In fact, the deck has seen something of a renaissance recently. Stratos and Malicious have returned from exile in full force, Vision Hero Ferris and Increase have made the theme less reliant on normal summons, and Evil Hero Malicious Bane has the unparalleled ability to destroy your opponent's field and your wallet. With all of that history, it's time to see how the new arrivals stack up, and the first one up to the plate is Elemental Hero Sunriser. Now, as a fusion monster, it's competing for space in a very cramped extra deck, but thankfully I don't think it's going to have a problem slotting into the roster. Sunriser can be made by fusing any two heroes with different attributes and must be fusion summoned. It gives a 200 attack boost to all of your monsters for every attribute represented on monsters you control, which is a small bonus to start, but grows exponentially. Sunriser gives himself a 200 attack boost, but add one other attribute and monster, and the combined attack on the field goes up by 800. Get a third, and now you've got 1800 extra attack points. But that's just a start. When special summoned, you get to add a Miracle Fusion from your deck to your hand. You've heard of the link that searches the field spell, but have you heard of the fusion that searches the fusion spell? I also like that it triggers off special summoning, so anything that can get around Sunriser's summoning conditions will trigger the effect as well. Lastly, and this is what really gets me, whenever an attack is declared involving another hero you control, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. Just free removal for punching things. Or, whenever your opponent attempts to punch your heroes. And as long as this translation holds, it's not once per turn, so the more hero spam that you can do, the more removal you can bring to bear. Hey, Future Nova here. Yeah, the translation I got was off, at least insofar as how it's represented in the TCG. A video came out on the official Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube channel after I recorded this, featuring Sunriser's English translation and... yeah, both the Miracle Fusion search and the destruction on attack effects are both hard once per turns. It does tone down its power a fair bit, but my opinion on it is still rather positive, and I wanted to make sure to correct it so nobody absorbed any misinformation. Now, back to your regularly scheduled video. Now, all of this stuff sounds really smashing, but I think it's important to go over all the aspects of this card with a fine-toothed comb and make sure that we're not overlooking any drawbacks. I don't want to come across as someone who's like, listen only to the hype, pay no attention to the inconsistencies behind the curtain. After all, a lot of effects sound good in a vacuum, but die down when you start factoring in other variables. For instance, Sunriser's fusion materials. Now, historically, heroes have been pretty attribute agnostic. They've been all over the place. But most hero decks, at least the ones that have topped events in the past few months as of this recording, are largely dark attribute. They're lined with Malicious, Shadow Mist, Vion, Ferris, Increase, Celestial. The only two non-darks the deck plays are Stratos in Wind and Solid Soldier in Earth. And that's not necessarily a doomsday prediction. The deck has tons of ways to search heroes. And with the concurrent release of Liquid Man, which we'll get into later, we'll have a water to add to the mix. But it is important to keep in mind that a card that clearly cares about having as many attributes as possible is being introduced into a theme that is growing continuously mono-dark. Now, this can be mitigated by playing a couple of Miracle Fusions, and that will likely be how Link heroes will summon this guy moving forward. But the issue is finding room for the card now. Heroes are already struggling with keeping their decks around the 40 card limit, so they either have to bulk up the deck by adding 2 to 3 extra cards, or cut ones that have already been successful for them. It's also worth mentioning that, while I find the on-attack destruction effect to be very strong, it is one of those, if you make it to the battle phase, you get a good thing effect. and that will vary in power depending on how interactive the format is. If your opponent has sufficient ways to negate Sunriser's effects, or just remove him outright, it won't help you break your opponent's boards. But, all that being said, I would still count Sunriser as one of the most powerful fusions the theme has access to. I know I just went on a big rant about all of its drawbacks, but who knows? Clever deck builders could make a variant hero list that bucks the trends of current hero strategies. It certainly does its job of making Miracle Fusion a threatening presence once again, and with Liquid Man on its way, it certainly won't want for excellent fusion material. So that about wraps it up for this episode of Plus Ones. Are there any Sunriser interactions that come up if you go outside the current hero roster? My research was primarily focused on how this card would be adapted to current competitive builds, but I'm sure there are a lot of brews that I couldn't research that take this card in some interesting directions. So I'm very excited to see what you come up with. Make sure to subscribe for more coverage of the Magical Hero set, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.